Welcome to Situational Awareness, a podcast brought to you by Militarnyi.com. I'm your host Valentina Kuzik, and today I'll talk to Vadym Kushnikov, Executive Director of Militarnyi.com. We'll talk about aerial threats that Ukraine is facing every day, how it is countering it, and what Western countries can learn from Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. Vadym, did you sleep well last night?
Fortunately, it is, but it's not a common way like nights are coming in Kyiv night by night, day by day.
Yeah. Typically nights look more like the one 2 days ago, where there were 18 missiles and around 400 drones attacking Kyiv. And in June, Ukraine recorded the highest number of civilian casualties in the past 3 years. So 232 people were killed, according to the UN. So today we want to talk more about Ukraine's air defense and the role of aviation in countering aerial threats.
Yeah.
So the first question would be, Ukraine subjected to daily air attacks by Russia, and how Russia is evolving in terms of its airstrike capabilities and strategies?
It's quite a good question. So we need to split on the topics. First, it's tactics and the drones by itself, which Russians are used against Ukraine. So currently we see that Russians increased the numbers of drones which they are produced per day, per month. If we are step back, for example, in 2024, Russians declare in their documents which leaked that they intend to produce 15,000 drones annually. So we are talking about 2024. On current year, we see that Russians plan to increase and double the production rate of strike drones, deep strike drones, Shahid type drones especially. And this number will be increased up to 30,000. And this is really big threat currently Ukraine faced with. But we also need to understand that not only increase numbers of these drones, but also improvements and modernization of drones itself also take place. So currently Russian use 8-channel CRPA antennas of couple types. First type, it's antennas which produced in Russia, and the second type, it's Chinese produced antennas. So it's really strong solution which unfortunately did not jammed as well as, for example, 4-channel CRP antenna which Russians used previously. Iranian ones, Russian ones, also Chinese ones. So currently, Ukrainian means of electronic warfare, jammers, or maybe spoofing devices, not so well performance. And also, if we are talking about modernization of drones, they are started to use more powerful engines, which increase altitudes of flight and speed of flight of these drones. So it's also make these drones hard to defeat it and countering it. And also, with increasing the numbers of produced drones, Russian changed their tactics also dramatically. If we are looking back, we also could see that Russians spread out their drones. For example, if they use 10 drones against 10 separate targets. And now they are using the swarm tactic where dozens of drones are primarily focus on one or couple targets. And this is really, really big call for Ukrainian air defense units.
You're mentioning that there are more drones produced by Russians.
Yes.
You're not including in these amounts the drones they are purchasing or their partners are providing to them. So this is basically just Russia-produced drones, correct?
Sure, because they are not so good, for example, to buy or obtain drones abroad. They are primarily focused to full circle production in Russia itself.
So there are more drones and they are better in terms of technicality and technology, and how it is reflected on the battleground in Ukraine.
If we are talking about air domain of hostilities here in Ukraine, it's really have a significant impact. But we need to understand that, for example, just only improvements on drone without improvements of tactics doesn't work. So with improvements of drones, they became faster, they're flying higher, they could feel more flexible with tactics which are they're chosen for one target and could, for example, use other tactics with other targets.
Mm-hmm. And how is Ukraine responding to that?
It's also complicated solutions because we have a multi-layer air defense here in Ukraine, starting for big SAMs like Patriots, NASAMs, IRIS-T, and numerous of others. For example, Italian Mamba, SAM. Next layer, for example, it's Ukrainian combat aviation, fighter jets. Also, whole spectrum of fighter jets which are involved in countering of these air attacks, starting from Soviet legacy MiG-29, Su-27, and currently obtained by Western allies F-16s, Mirages, and whole spectrum of these jets are involved. Next layer is army aviation. It's combat helicopters, which are also engaged against striking drones. And ground air defense units is presented in form of mobile air defense units with large caliber machine guns and other means, manpads, machine guns, artillery, air artillery. Whole of this spectrum of tools are involving in air defense of Ukrainian territory.
You mentioned some of the Western supplies, air defense systems, and have they been effective on the battleground, and can you expand on this?
Sure. We see that, for example, Patriot SAM is an alternative tool against ballistic threats. Also, maybe the closest counterpart or analog is European Mamba, or maybe that's all. So, but we also have no evidence on public domain about effectiveness of Mamba against ballistic threats. The next also effective tool is IRIS-T, and for example, we have statements from Ukrainian Air Force Command, and they said that effectiveness and rate of successful intercepted targets of this SAM is about 90%. So it's quite effective. but also we need to understand that every single complex have their range of targets. If we are talking about Patriot, it's also good about whole spectrum of air targets, including ballistic threats. But if we are talking about the other systems like IRIS-T, it's really, really good for cruise missiles, for Shahid-like drones. Next is NASAMS. NASAMS is also very, very good against classic targets, for example. And we have also combination of these tools. We have, for example, Western-made missiles and Soviet legacy ground stations like Buk, like S-300s, which called in public FrankenSAM.
Can you tell us more about that?
Sure, it's really war-called systems. We have some amount of Soviet legacy systems, but we have no more ways how to obtain, for example, missiles for them, because whole production sites are based primarily in Russia and Russia satellites. So this call was really good combination between Western type missiles, RIM-7, AIM-7, and ground stations from these complexes. And also we have great numbers of intercepted targets by FrankenSAM complexes. And
do you have the percentage?
I could tell a story from weapon operator from such complex.
Like anecdotal evidence?
It's chosen by our audience. They are staying on some of the eastern part of line of contact and countering air threats and covering troops on the ground. They have 15 launches and 14 successful interception.
Wow, that's impressive. It's like NASAMS.
Yes, and this is really good, well-shown case how, for example, cooperation between countries on technological level could, for example, put 30, 40 years old missiles to also 30, 40 years ground systems and make a really good results. And also we could mention about Raven-SAM with AIM-132 SRAM missiles. So it's also primarily air-to-air missile, which could put onto the ground stations and also shown great results. The last public statements about its effectiveness, it's something like 70% of successful intercepted targets.
Can we imagine if there is, what's the percentage of those FrankenSAMs that you are mentioning and describing in the overall, let's say, market of air defense capabilities in Ukraine?
It's depend. It's depend because if we are talking about FrankenSAM is Buk SAM with RIM-7 missiles, it's primarily short-range air defense system, which initially created to cover troops on the battleground. So it's not the stationary big SAM like Patriot or other really big systems. So the main goal of this system is to cover troops near the front line because of its mobility, and also it's have their own armor. For example, which, for example, the Patriot SAM didn't have. And also its systems deploying on several sections, but primarily near the front line. And it's countering the threats like Russian bombs with UNPK modules, so it's gliding bombs, which also the huge threat for our troops, for our cities in the closest rear. And percentages are not so open data. You need to understand this. So currently we have only public information from our Air Force Command against the threats which are going to Ukrainian rear cities like Kiev, Odessa, Lviv, and other big Ukrainian cities. We could speculate, and I think it's depends, and maybe have the successful rate from 60 to 80%. Depend on some system and depend on type of missions. So it's something like that, but we need to understand that even 30% rate of successful intercept air threats is already fine result.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So an interesting question, since we have such a large park of different equipment for air defense, how does Ukraine maintain and repair its air defense and aviation infrastructure under constant attack, especially radar, logistics, and command centers?
To not disclosure some sensitive moments, I could mention that maybe this topics is the greatest questions and greatest challenges to Ukrainian air defense units, to Ukrainian logistic units, which are operating field of supplying, repairing equipment, and maybe it's the most, it's the second challenge, and the first challenge is Russians' activities itself, because really you mentioned right, we have lots of different systems. We have lots of systems which did not exist previously, and this really tough challenge to Ukrainians, warriors and soldiers which are involved in such process, and also it's a big challenge to Western companies, Western military units, which are also a response on operation in such fields, because we could really imagine, for example, American missile 30, 40 years old, and this Ukrainian SAM systems which is the same age, and you need to combine it. So it's really not so easy to maintain, to make these systems to be operable.
Yeah, so basically what people have to do, they have to innovate just with what they have, yeah, to develop something completely new. Another interesting question is, what is the role of fighter aviation play in defense airspace?
Currently, we see that Ukrainian fighter jets are involving in countering Russian airstrikes. So Ukrainian aviation show it really successful against wide range of air threats. Started from cruise missiles like KH-109, 101. Next air threats, for example, it's also cruise missiles like Caliber, KH-555. So it's really serious threats. You need to understand, for example, weight of warhead of KH-101 is 450 kilograms. It's quite a dangerous weapon. Other threats is Russian strike drones, Shahid type drones, and Ukrainian fighters, Ukrainian fighter aviators, fighter pilots, on daily base, 24/7, are guarded Ukrainian skies against such threats. They have multiple zone of response. For example, you need to understand that Russians have their own fighter aviation. They have wide range surface-to-air missiles systems like S-400. And for example, if they are deploying such a SAM as S-400 in occupied Crimea, they could threaten Ukrainian aviation in circle up to Cherkasy region.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is fair enough to say about Russian fighter jets with their Air-37M air-to-air missiles with operational range 200 kilometers plus. So, and they are on also daily routine patrolling a whole perimeter from the northern region of Ukraine with the border, and down from the front line. One or pair of such fighters are also patrolling these areas, and they could just immediately, for example, fire such missiles against air targets. And air targets, it's our own aviation, helicopters, fighter jets, assault aircrafts. So it's really big threats with which Ukrainian Air Command need to count it up.
Yeah, so basically the recent trend is they do have those rising capabilities, and they do have more drones and missiles, and they are overwhelming the Ukrainian air defense systems. Because do I understand correctly that the command basically have to decide who is doing what in the situation when we have like 400 Shahid drones attacking Kyiv, let's say, or Ukraine as a whole?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do they pass this decision? Because it seems quite complicated if you have this a really diverse park of air defense systems, and then again a very large amount of strikes. How you decide who is doing what, who is flying where?
Yeah, it's quite a good question, and it's really what the Air Force Command do primarily. So they are responsible not only for fighter jets, but also response on the ground anti-aircraft ecosystems, started from big SAMs to mobile anti-aircraft teams, fire teams. So we have multi-layer defense systems, and it's I think currently the best of the world, or maybe on second place, but however. Every single unit have their own area of responsibility. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if we're talking about air defense of Ukrainian capital, it's based from short-range air defense systems such as Skynex, Triton, Gepard, Brownings with on pickups. It's also quite effective tool if we are talking about short-range air defense. The next layer is short-range surface-to-air missile systems, such as NASAMs, such as Books with RIM-7, such as, for example, S-125. Next layer is also missile systems, and for example, we have the forward sections of flight path or flight road of Shahids, and this is area of responsibility of Army Aviation Unit, for example, with helicopters. And next layer is, for example, a zone of responsibility of Ukrainian fighter jets. So it's not the direct instruction, but it's just imagine. Mm-hmm. You can imagine how it works.
Yeah, it sounds really complicated. especially, when you have a limited amount of time to react on that. How are advanced technologies such as interceptor drones, directed energy weapons, lasers, or electronic warfare being used to repulse aerial attacks? Can you tell us a little bit more on that?
Yeah, and currently drone interceptors is the main point of focus, because we could see that classic air defense systems have they shortage of missiles, for example, shortage of ammunition to anti-aircraft artillery, and we have limitations of fighter jets. It's also common fact, and this is asymmetrical way of warfare, so it's cost effective. It's really need to understand, because if we're talking about war, we also need to keep in mind the economical factors. Could we produce the needed amount of weaponry? Could we produce a needed amount of tools, of weapon systems? And currently, really, we have already battle-proven solutions like drone interceptor from American companies. We have also Ukrainian developers which are hardly work on this field to produce the best solutions. First is cost-effective. Next is really complicated systems, because we need to understood we have successful projects like Dronefall, which started a year before against Russian reconnaissance drones.
Mm-hmm.
But it's primarily FPV type drones, which are manually operated by operator. And if we're talking about one night where Russians launch hundreds of such drones, we need to understand that currently even Ukraine don't have the needed amount of qualified operators which could successfully in nighttime, it's not daytime, it's nighttime, could successfully intercept such air targets. So we are talking right now about AI-based solutions, mm-hmm. which could help a drone operator to successfully intercept this drone, this air target, enemy drone. And really, I hope that in perspective of couple months, mm-hmm. We could see that more and more Shahed type drones will be intercepted by interceptor drones, okay. Correctly. But also, currently we see that Russians started more actively use jet-powered version of Shahed drones, mm-hmm. like Shahed 238, 236, and it's also the threat we are need to count, because the speeds and altitudes of flying of jet-powered Shahed type drones are more increase and more higher than.
But does it mean that interceptors cannot counter those more powerful drones? Oh, they can, but it's just more complicated.
Jet-powered.
Yeah, jet-powered.
I think right now, unfortunately, it couldn't. Mm-hmm. But we see that these threats are rising, and Ukrainian developers are also don't sit tight.
Yeah, sure. They are trying to innovate those as well.
Sure.
Yeah. What about the lasers?
Lasers, yeah, it's the other track. We also could mention about UK provided laser systems, and also Ukrainian developers are showcased their developers and solutions maybe this year, spring this year.
But those are just concepts, no like serial production?
Currently, about Ukrainian solutions, not so many open source information about production rate or serial production status of these developments. If we're talking about laser provided by UK, it's also not a lot of information, but we also could say that it's battle proven. But for example, if we're talking about laser weapon systems, it's short range weapon systems. The most powerful lasers, combat lasers, could intercept targets at distance 5, maximum 6 kilometers. So it's point defense, air defense systems. So, for example, to install on some critical infrastructure facilities, and it could cover exact facility.
So you covered the lasers, and what about the electronic warfare?
Yeah, this domain is also critical and maybe one of the largest domain of nowadays war. Both sides, like Ukraine and Russia, are engaging dozens of types, dozens of systems, like on the front line, and also covering rear cities and rear territories. Ukraine also good on this type of warfare. We have maybe up to 10 already battle-proofed systems, which are deploying like on the front line and also in the rear cities, to jamming, to spoofing air threats, which Russia launch daily. And Russians are also good in this battle domain. You need to understand that Russia just completely cover whole European part of the country with GPS jamming systems, with GPS spoofing systems. And for example, it's really not big news, for example, to Baltic states, that Russia are constantly interrupt in GPS signals.
Yeah, exactly. It already caused some problems for Baltics. What key lessons should Western countries draw from Ukraine's air defense experience in this war?
Firstly and primary, it's invest in air defense systems. So basic doctrine of NATO countries, it's the key role of fighters in air defense and airstrikes. As you can see, for example, it's great solution in fast developing war conflicts. If we have, for example, stable line of contact where enemy could deploy closely to front rear, there are some systems to build patrolling zones for their own fighter jets, which could, with Air-47, get you a distance 200 plus kilometers. The closest competitor, for example, from European weapon system, it's Meteor missile, but that's all. So they have.
So are you saying that should develop more of that?
Sure, it's the first goal and the first goal to ramp up the production rates of missile interceptors like Patriot, like Aster-30, Aster-50, and also increased number of anti-aircraft artillery. We see that Russia could, for example, spam you with hundreds of striking drones. Okay, for example, 50% of it is dummy drones or drone decoys. But how do you know?
Yeah,
You need to respond.
exactly.
So it's the main and primary call. It's to focus on production rate of anti-aircraft systems, starting from artillery with, for example, modern ammunition, 40 mil, 30 mil, could by only 1 or 2 shots successfully intercept such air target like Shahid type drones. And Ukraine also proven this. For example, I heard the story about crew of Bofors 40 mil anti-aircraft gun, which need only 7 rounds against 4 Shahids. But it's practice, it's experience. For example, I can even imagine how many rounds basic trained crew need to intercept only 1. But I hope European crews never knows it. But anyway, the key lessons, it's also jamming systems, electronic warfare. It's also really important domain in modern combat, and drones interceptors. It's a really cost-effective way to countering such threats like deep strike drones. So I don't think it's okay. I think it's quite easy to say. It's harder to do, but it's a matter of your survival.
Yeah, but yeah, okay. And the question that gets me every time, if you have multiple suggestions for our allies, what they should do to respond in case of Russian attack. But the interesting issue is that we just spent half an hour explaining how important it is to respond immediately to Russian evolving technologies, because they're changing constantly something, and we have to come up with something that responds to that. And how European companies, like governments, can get this information, to basically on a daily basis to also improve their capabilities. Like the most, the easiest answer to that is just communicate daily to Ukrainians, but maybe you have some other ideas they can use.
I think you have really straight solution. For example, if you have some companies which operate in drone manufacturing, these companies could send their pieces of equipment to Ukraine. Okay, please take it for free. We need tests. And on the stage, the first stage, for example, drone company sends their drone, Ukrainian drone operators, specialists, for example, asking few questions, and on this current stage, it will be clear: is it could be or not could be operatable here in Ukraine? If it's okay, next step is deploying on the combat zone, on the front line. And you have feedback from the operators, which then, okay, it's worked perfectly or not perfectly or needs some improvements, because really none of drone of the box, for example, could not operate here in Ukraine. In case of hard jamming environment, in case of no GPS signal, no communication signal, so you need to do improvements constantly on every steps. That's how, for example, you could obtain information from the real cases, real life operations. I think it's onlyest way.
Yeah. So that's a call to European companies and governments. Please come and talk to us. Yeah, we'll check what you are producing.
It's for companies.
We'll provide the
Yes,
feedback.
it's for companies because in European countries, most part of defense tech companies it's a private companies.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about government, you need to realize that how much you send to Ukraine, it's how less you need to
produce yourself.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's is it our only call to international partners, or how can they help us to counter Russian aerial strikes?
Our partners, it's, for example, we need to understand and compare. For example, Russian partners is autocratic, and they have their own political will to support Russia. Actively or not actively, politically or with supplies, or for example, like North Korea with troops, and they sent a couple dozen of thousands, yes, of troops, and couple hundreds are already died. European partners or general partners, it's democracy, but we need to understand that Ukraine needs more predictable allies and partners, because we see how many and how big impact it is when, for example, some shortages, some pause in supplies. For one perspective, it's only the matter of political solutions. For Ukraine perspective, it's people's lives.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a strong message to end on with. And thank you, Vadym, for talking to us. Let's hope that Ukrainian skies will be safer.
Thank you.
Thank you.